So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum everyone. A very good morning to everyone. And I would like to congratulate PSH for a wonderful conference, which I've observed yesterday and on day one as well. And I would like to thank for giving me this opportunity to speak on this forum. So ladies and gentlemen, so next couple of minutes, I'll be talking about acute on chronic liver failure, a PASL perspective. So I don't have any conflict of interest to declare. So let's go through the first case of 45-year-old female who presented with history of jaundice 5 years ago, which was resolved with symptomatic treatment. She remains fine for the rest of the time, and now she presented with 2 weeks history of jaundice, low-grade fever, abdominal distension. And on examination, she was found to have icterus, acne on face, ascites was positive. However, there were no signs of hepatic encephalopathy. So her lab workup showed a high TLC count, low platelets, coagulopathy. INR was 2.8 and her creatinine was 0.8. However, the sodium was around 172. And you can see that over here, the liver functions was grossly deranged. Her ultrasound abdomen revealed moderate ascites, dilate portal vein, coarse liver, and minor splenomegaly. So young lady who had a history of jaundice 5 years ago, we don't know the cause, she had a resolution of symptoms after treatment, and now she presented with 2 jaundice, ascites, thrombocytopenia, coagulopathy, and deranged liver function test. Her MELD score is about 28, and her estimated 3-month mortality is like based upon MELD score is around 19.6. So now the questions arises over here are like, what's going on with this patient? What is an underlying disease condition at the moment she's facing? What had led to this condition, and how to assess the disease severity and how to predict the prognosis? Is this the MELD score is fine, CTP score is fine to assess the prognosis, or do we have better scoring system in our toolbox? And what type of treatment could be offered to this patient? So coming to that, what's going on for this patient, we understand that there is a condition we call acute decompensation, and the whole of the entire GI society is well aware of that. The acute decompensation means that the presence of ascites, upper GI bleed, hepatic encephalopathy, presence of SPP without any other organ failure, we usually define as an acute decompensation. On the other hand, acute on chronic liver failure is an entity which actually manifests with the liver failure, organ failure after the development of the liver failure, or maybe in the presence of liver failure. What is the difference between these two situations? I'll come to that. And associated with very high short-term mortality, and this is a condition we call it as an acute on chronic liver failure. So where the APASL is actually having an instance about that, the other characteristics of ACLF included its association with an intense systemic inflammatory response, its frequent and close association with the precipitating conditions, like, for example, the use of alcohol, presence of hepatotropic infection, etc., and its association with single or multiple organ failures. So the definitions, coming to the definition of ACLF, where I'll be defining a PASL perspective, I would like to highlight certain points. So multiple definitions are existing at the moment. There is no single one consensus definition in this condition. So no universal agreement on the definition. So the basic variability is actually exists in regards to the precipitating events and underlying etiology. So the definition of the organ failure is variable, and the involvement of the different organ failure into the definition, this is one of the major variability which actually exists for the different definitions. So these definition, the good thing about is that these definitions haven't impacted the management. So the management is more or less same, whatever the situation is after a certain time, but definitely the diagnosis, prognostication, and the initial definition is actually, these are the differences existing in the various societies. So to make it simple, I'll be comparing APASL and EASL-CLIF consortium definition. And you know very well that there are different societies, the Chinese society, North American society, as well as WTO, who has defined the condition in different situation. So what is the major difference in APASL and ACLF? I'll be coming to step by step. So the APASL mainly define it as the event with acute hepatic insult, which is manifested as jaundice and a coagulopathy, complicated within 4 weeks by ascites and error encephalopathy in a patient with previously diagnosed and undiagnosed chronic liver disease associated with high mortality. And the first consensus was actually based upon a cohort of 1,400 patients, which is actually the data coming from 32 countries, 32 Asian countries, South Asian countries. So the subsequent is actually the guideline, which has been published in 2009, which is actually based upon the data results of 3,300 patients, again, coming from 32 countries across the continent. So while the EASL definition is actually based upon the European data, consists of 1,300 patients approximately, and they defined as an acute deterioration of pre-existing chronic liver disease, usually related to the precipitating event and associated with increased mortality at 3 months due to multi-organ failure. So just remember that the involvement of the different organ is actually one major criteria in EASL definition. So the EASL CLIF definition is actually considered the patients with liver disease, pre-existing liver disease, who either have a decompensation a priori, or now they are presenting as a first event in a form of a decompensation. So the both of the group of the patient has been included in their definition. While on the other hand, in case of APASL is actually considered a patient with chronic liver disease who do not so considered. So APASL has considered the patient with chronic liver disease who do not have prior history of hepatic decompensation, and this time they are presenting for the first time. So the precipitating events in case of EASL were considered intrahepatic as well as both extrahepatic events, for example, the infections, the GI bleed and all, while the APASL is actually having a main emphasis on intrahepatic events. So the major organ system considered for the definitions include the 6 organ, which include liver, kidney, brain, coagulation, circulation, and respiration. And the basis of the definition of ACLF is actually based upon the existence of failure of one of the 6 major organ systems. So the failure of each organ system is actually assessed using CLIF-C organ failure scale, which I'll coming to that in a minute. On the other hand, in case of APASL, the liver dysfunction was actually considered to be central to the definition, and hepatic encephalopathy may be present as a consequences of that, but may not be on the presentation. So the definition of ACLF is actually based upon the presence of mainly the liver function test, liver dysfunction, and extrahepatic organ failure may be subsequently developed, but they are not included in the definition. So the APASL is actually considered diagnosis as an early because they consider as a reversibility as a chance. If the condition is diagnosed as an early stage, treated in an early stage, they consider it as a reversible condition, which may actually affect the overall prognosis of the patient. While the EASL says that this is too late, reversibility is unlikely, may not affect the outcome, but the overall prognosis again depends on how severe the disease was on the presentation. Having said that, the APASL talks about the homogeneity, which means that on presentation, they consider it as a homogeneous group of patients with underlying chronic liver disease who is presenting for the first time with the worsening condition. On the other hand, in case of EASL, the homogeneity of the population is not there. Rather, they consider a bigger group who had decompensation before, but now this time presenting with the organ failure. As I said that for APASL, main insult, main injury is considered as an hepatic one. And on the other hand, EASL and CLIF is actually considered a hepatic or systemic injury as an igniting event. Sepsis is actually considered as a consequence or a complication by APASL. On the other hand, the EASL considered as a cause or a precipitant for this liver injury. Organ failure, liver is the main organ APASL considered as primary to start with, and subsequently other organs could be involved, but they consider it as a disease consequences, not the criteria to define ACLF. On the other hand, EASL considered that the systemic inflammation can lead to a kidney failure as a primary, or with or without other organ involvement, but they included liver as well as other extrahepatic both injury into their definition. So the time frame is a little different: 4 weeks, 4 to 12 weeks. Disease severity in scores are different for both, and I'll come to that. So the one of the major consideration for the EPASL stance is this term of a golden window. So what this says that this is a time period where if the disease is identified early and the targeted therapy is provided early, then you can actually may have a good outcome and the reversibility of the disease. And what exactly this golden window is, I'll come to that. So these are few basic differences between the EPASL definition. And here you can see that and consider it more easily that whenever there will be an acute insult, the patient can develop an acute liver failure. On the other hand, if somebody is having an underlying chronic liver disease, there will be three types of the situation. So the chronic liver disease, which is actually stable, and acute insult, developing a liver failure. And on the other hand, so compensated liver disease, acute insult, and again, developing a liver failure and having first decompensation. So the ESAL is actually, and the third one is actually the decompensated cirrhosis having the decompensation before as well. So the ESAL is actually include the entire paradigm, all patients. On the other hand, EPASL is actually consider just only this group of patient, which is relatively in terms of disease severity on presentation appears to be less severe because there was no recurrent episode of prior liver injury this group has experienced. And what is the logic behind it? The logic behind this, again, this golden window period concept, which says that no matter whatever the precipitating event would be, it will be leading to an inflammation, ultimately immune paralysis, sepsis, shock, an entire paradigm of organ failure, and ultimately mortality, or the patient will survive. But on the other hand, this is a time period when there is no SIRS and the patient is actually moving towards SIRS before the organ failure. This is the time period which they call it as a golden window. So during this golden window, if the disease is identified earlier and in future targeted therapies are available, then this group will actually behave differently as compared to the group who's actually having already the more bad diseased liver as compared to the people who are having relatively less diseased liver. So this is the basic concept behind the EPASL stance. So in summary, so EPASL is actually consider the ACLF in those patients who have an underlying compensated cirrhosis, diagnosed, and those with non-cirrhotic but a chronic liver disease condition who had a first episode of acute liver deterioration due to an acute insult, leading to this hyperbilirubinemia of more than 5, leading to a coagulopathy of INR of more than 1.5, or a prothrombin activity of less than 40%, complicated within the 4 weeks by the clinical ascites, hepatic encephalopathy, or both, but without any other organ involvement on presentation. They defined it as an acute on chronic liver failure. So what comes as under the category of acute insults? Hepatotropic infections, non-hepatotropic infections affecting the liver, targeting the liver, which could be bacterial, parasitic, fungal. They are considered as acute events. Drug-induced liver injury, autoimmune diseases, metabolic diseases like Wilson's and all. The presence of occlusive portal vein thrombosis, Budd-Chiari syndrome, they are considered it as acute insults. The upper GI bleed acute presentation has been reported in 5% of the cases, but whether this could be is actually considered as an acute cause of deterioration. So data is lacking, and EPASL is actually considered as a gray area. So defining an underlying chronic liver disease, cirrhosis, non-cirrhotic chronic liver disease is considered. Chronic liver disease include patients with chronic hepatitis and or significant fibrosis without cirrhosis. Fatty liver disease is also considered in this category. Excludes the patient who have already experienced prior decompensation manifested by ascites, hepatic encephalopathy, GI bleed, SBP, and ascites. So the diagnosis of chronic liver disease mainly and the cirrhosis in a setting of ACLF is actually made by the history, physical examination, laboratory parameters, endoscopic and radiological investigations. So using our criteria, 95% of the cases in earlier reports has been reported to have an identifiable precipitating event. As compared to the Western population, where approximately 40% of the cases haven't found an acute event identified. Hepatitis B reactivation was the most frequent trigger of ACLF, followed by HEV in earlier data. HBV, HCV, alcoholic liver diseases has been reported to be the main cause of chronic liver diseases. But later on, as the data pooled up, they found a changing trend of underlying etiology of acute insults as well as the chronic injury. For instance, alcohol is now considered as the commonest etiology of acute and chronic both causes. Increasing trend of DILI and autoimmune has been reported in the data set of HEPACIL ARC consortium. Hepatitis B, HEV is showing a relatively downward trend. So idiopathic now is like 5 to 15% of the cases reported in ARC data. So based upon their observation and the pool data, HEPACIL is actually differentiate between acute liver failure as well as an acute decompensation. For instance, they consider as ACLF with hepatic insult as an index presentation, and an acute decompensation as hepatic or non-hepatic insult can be index or a subsequent presentation. Identifiable risk factors up to 95% of the cases in acute decompensation you may found is actually an identifiable etiology of approximately 70% of cases. Time from insult to the presentation, 4 week up to 12 week. Underlying cirrhosis may or may not be present, always present. When cirrhosis is not present, there will be an underlying evidence of chronic liver disease. Prior decompensation, no. With or without prior decompensation in this category of patient. Mortality is like approximately 35 to 51% at 1 month and 3 months, and 23 to 29% in this group of patient. So reversible has been, or the recovery has been reported in half of the cases, and this was found uncommon in this group of patient. So when do we need histology or the liver biopsy in cases of ACLF? Whenever is needed, transjugular apostle says you should individualize it based upon case to case, decide about it. It may actually guide you about the diagnosis. For example, when there is a diagnosis of you're thinking about an autoimmune liver disease and you can confirm the diagnosis by doing a transjugular liver biopsy, it may guide you about the management. For example, in such cases, autoimmune hepatitis, Wilson's disease, you can actually have an evidence-based treatment. And then again, is actually help you to prognosticate these patients. It may be helpful when the presence of an underlying chronic liver disease and a oral cause of chronic liver disease and or a cause of acute insult is not clear, then you can take as actually help from the liver biopsy. For example, as I said that autoimmune liver disease, cholestatic liver disease, these are the conditions where you can actually take a help of liver biopsy to confirm the diagnosis. So when to use the non-invasive tools? The non-invasive tools to measure the liver stiffness and a biomarker may help in identifying the patient with advanced fibrosis, making it more clear that whether this is an acute decompensation or this is just underlying chronic liver disease or or cirrhosis is present or not. But the studies are needed to validate the performance of these tests in this setting. The data is actually lacking in this regard. So in terms of prognostication, so EASL is actually proposed this CLIF-C organ failure scoring system. And I'm sure everybody is like actually well aware of this scoring system. And based upon that, ACLF is actually divided into 3 grades of increasing severity. So ACLF grade 1 is actually include 3 subgroups, which includes the patient with single kidney failure, patient with single liver coagulation, circulatory or lung failure, associated with a creatinine level of ranging 1.5 to 1.9, or hepatic encephalopathy grade 1 or grade 2 or both. Patient with single brain failure with creatinine level of ranging between 1.5 to 1.9. And grade 2 include the patients with 2 organ failure. Grade 3 include the patients with 3 organ failure or more had an ACLF grade 3. And based upon that, the mortality is actually changes. So the severity of ACLF is assessed by using the ARC score by ACL, the HEPACIL group. And here what the claim is that this the CLIF SOFA and the CLIF organ failure scores and the cutoff what they actually develop arbitrarily and included the patient with hepatic and non-hepatic insults. The organ failure was solely derived based upon the consensus opinion by the experts, and here an objective evidence in the criteria, validated criteria is lacking. The score is big cumbersome and become predictive of mortality only when experts extrahepatic organ failures are included. So the ARC score provides the physician a window to decide early and explore the definitive therapies, including the liver transplantation, and this is what they propose. A relatively simpler criteria based upon total bilirubin, hepatic encephalopathy, INR, lactate level, and creatinine level. And they divide into three categories, grade 1, 2, and 3. And here, as the score goes high, the grade goes high, the mortality increases. For example, this is approximately 13% in grade 1 ACLF. It is 45% in grade 2, and this is 86% in grade 3. So a trend of ARC score within the first week can predict the need for liver transplantation. The score of less than 10 at presentation or decrease in a score below 10 by the end of first week has been reported to be associated with high chance of survival. So this is a kind of dynamic model. So the patient with R score of more than 10 should be listed for liver transplantation, and the transplant evaluation based upon ARC score need more prospective studies. However, this score should also be estimated on day 4 in day 7 to predict the course of illness and the prognosis. So what does it tells you? It tells you about the early identification of high risk group, reassessment at day 4 and day 7, so that you can identify who is getting worse, and you can actually list them up for the liver transplantation, which would be a kind of definitive therapy associated with improvement in outcome. So this ARC score has been compared with various scoring systems and found to be having a relatively better accuracy to predict the prognosis. So the organ dysfunction in organ failure in ACLF for early risk stratification, what is the special stance? So the special says that the organ dysfunction in the failure should not be used in the definition, but for prognostication in patient with ACLF could be used, and the mortality in ACLF increases with the number of organ failure. And as they again said that they want to identify patient, a homogeneous group of patient which could be benefited best by the early therapy. So the organ failures are not included in the definition. And here again, they said the same thing, that so identification of those patients at the search stage before the development of the sepsis and organ failure is the point of intention for them, where when again the targeted therapies could be identified and the patient could be benefited. So the principles of the treatments are actually same for almost all of the society, addressing the infections, addressing the kidney failure, providing a support to the lungs, the hemodynamic supports, the support for the coagulation nervous system in a form of treatment of hepatic encephalopathy and the GI bleed. So an algorithm is actually based upon the same criteria is actually proposed by the APASL. And here they propose that, so whenever there is actually an acute insult, try to identify it. In here, you can treat it. For example, if this is an alcohol-related injury, then besides the supportive treatment, you can give steroids or GCSF and pentoxifylline, whatever is actually you based upon the indication, you can try that. If this is a reactivation of hepatitis B, you can give a targeted therapy for autoimmune hepatitis, for DILI, stop the precipitating drug. And for autoimmune hepatitis, you give steroids. For DILI, the role of plasmapheresis is like definitely in some studies been supportive. For Wilson's disease, again, you can decide about the treatment. So here, if you can identify an underlying cause, treat it accordingly. And if the score is less than 10, then again, this is the group of patients where the APASL, based upon their own data, they propose regenerative treatment and observe and follow up. EASL doesn't support this regenerative therapy idea. And this is till now, the APASL group is actually based upon their own data is actually supporting that. If the score is less than 10 and they're decreasing with the passage of time, then definitely here you can actually consider organ support if needed, plus minus bridging therapy. If more than 11 and getting worse and all, so bridging therapy, and after that, if not improving, then these are the candidates who will be considered for the liver transplantation. So the albumin, judicious use, tips for acute varicose bleed, or in case of in case of like acute varicose bleed could be considered. RRT based upon the standard criteria, PASL, EASL favors the same. Prioritization of patient with ACLF for the liver transplantation. This is something which actually all societies is actually supports that based upon the different prognostic scores one can consider them and listing them for the liver transplantation wherever the listing is available. In case of Pakistan, probably early transportation to the centers where the transplant is available will be the main crunch to consider them for early transplantation. So, ladies and gentlemen, in summary, this is ACLF is still an evolving field. No matter, we have lots of evidences available for the disease characteristics, the disease behavior and all, but there's still lots of lacunae are existing in defining the definition, including whether this homogeneous, non-homogeneous group population, is this still should be considered or not? What will be the actual impact of this reversibility and the golden window time period if whether the data from the European countries is supporting the same phenomena or not? So EASL data is actually supports this phenomena, but the data is actually lacking from the different parts of the world. Early predictors of mortality and non-reversibility of the condition would pave off to offer the priority of the liver transplantation for the such patient. So the effort should be made to have the data from the different part of the world and looking up for the same outcome as the different societies are actually looking for. So there are still very unanswered questions in this field. So APASL has the largest data set, but again, this is based upon certain regions from where the data is actually coming. So more data, probably combining the global data, all societies sitting up and then looking at how the disease behavior is may give you an answers of many unanswered questions. So I thank you all for your kind listening. Thank you very much.